This week, we're facilitating something the next 3 or 4 days that will have you know every member in the group, like in a really powerful and efficient way. So we'll do that, not today because not everybody's here today, but we'll begin to start that process so you can know who's in the room and their superpower, their strength, a little bit about their businesses. We didn't get to do that at Cloud Camp, but we've got a way to facilitate that. So there's a lot of incredible humans in the room. Just to kind of put a wrap on things and transition into Justin here, a few of you have asked me, like, what have we actually participated in? And I feel like part of our health journey has really evolved as the Vargas family, but I believe by having people like Justin and John in my life are going to take another part of my health journey to another level. But the part I was reactive around was the fact that my wife's kidneys are failing, and my son is dealing with a lot of mental health stuff, like real talk there. Like we went through a very rough 2021 and beginning of 2022 with Keaton, and my daughter's having these fears, and so like that was where we started in our health journey, because that's part of health. Like to me, what the Lord has really shown me is there's a physical health, there's mental, there's emotional, and I actually believe the one we do the least good job with is the recreational. We don't have fun enough as entrepreneurs. Like we don't have enough fun and enough laughs, and I'm telling you, it does something for the soul. So I was trying to deal with a lot of the mental and the emotional, and so meeting Gary has been profound in that, like was really profound in that. And so the stuff that we've been really committed to in 2022 is the superhuman protocol. Like I do it 3 or 4 days a week. I lay on a PMF mat for 5 minutes or 10 minutes. I breathe in 900 liters of oxygen out of like this big bag, and I can see it go down. It used to take me 10 minutes to do it. I'm on a treadmill doing it. And now it takes me about 6.5 minutes. It takes Kim 20 minutes to do because her lungs have some, not as much capacity as mine. And I'm a bigger guy too. So I breathe in 900 liters of oxygen, and then I get into a red light bed for 20 minutes. And it's been really profound. I can notice, the thing that I am very aware of is the brain fog, and like getting 2 days in one, and the energy has been really, really profound. So that's a protocol that we have done as a family. And you know, the PMF mat and the oxygen are relatively affordable. The red light bed, which is very profound, is probably the biggest investment of those 3 pieces. The other thing that we've been very committed to is a lot of for Kim, specifically for her kidneys, but Ed Milet asked me this question a couple of weeks ago, like, how has ozone been for you? Ozone has been huge for me, and Kim. We do that on a weekly basis, which is literally taking blood out of your system into a bag, and then they get O3, and they put O3 into your blood, and you can see it turn from like a dark red or maroon to a bright bubbly red, which means that blood is oxygenated, and then they put it back into your body. You know, and it's been really, really profound, but it's been a big part of her kidney treatment. But the biggest piece for her in what she's done is the exosomes. And I don't know enough about it to speak to it. Gary's eaten our face off with that as well. But I know that it's been very, very profound, and it's something that a lot of people in my sphere of influence are doing exosomes every 6 weeks to 12 weeks to be very proactive. It's interesting how pharma has prohibited those from pricing coming down on them, because they don't want people to have access to some of these things that can really be profound. So we've been all in, and we just noticed a difference in her kidney, a difference in my energy. My son has improved significantly. He hasn't arrived to where as a dad, I want him to be, but he is completely different than he was a year ago. And our daughter is no longer having those like nightmarish, somebody's gonna come and kill me. And a lot of that has to do with what we talked about. But I'm now wanting to step into a different domain around the physicality too, and around even deeper stuff, not just for me, but for my family. Like I feel like my son a couple of days ago was like, Dad, can we begin to work out together? I'm like, that could be the most powerful thing that we can do. And just being around Justin has opened up my mind and my seen things in a bigger way. And Elise, his beautiful bride, I got to spend some time with her a few weeks ago in Miami. But how I heard about him was actually through another member by the name of Nick Unsworth. And Nick said, Pete, Justin has completely, Own It coaching and everything with Own It has completely transformed my health journey. And so I love the building up of what is the transition of what's about to happen, because Gary focused a lot on the genetics and the genetic testing. Justin's going to take it some steps further and talk about a few core things that are critical to your health. I always rehearse this. I just rehearsed it with his wife. I always try to rehearse his last name, and I always want to call him Justin Roethlisberger because it's easier to do. Roethlingshoefer? No. Is that close? Roethlingshoefer. I always rehearse it. Like I'm bad with names. But I love this. I love his heart for people. I love his heart for what he wants to do to create optimal health. He's worked with professional athletes, has an incredibly powerful story like Gary. Saw them doing the wrong thing for athletes. Like the whole protocol around athletes not being the right thing. And he stepped in there and began to do the right thing. And obviously when you do the right thing, sometimes people don't necessarily want you doing that. And so he's been huge on the health journey, and so he's going to take it a few steps further of optimizing your health in 2023 and creating that optimal health before lunch. And then I'm going to have John come after lunch, right after we're done with lunch. So will y'all give it up for Justin R. Justin R.
Thanks, man. Awesome, guys. How are you? Love it. So great to be here with you guys. And going through what we just saw with Gary, it's amazing when we can all of a sudden take a look at our bodies in a different way. This is just this amazing vessel, this very unique thing that we have that we're able to steward, that we have access to in a very unique way. And today I'm going to want to teach you how to run your body like your business. You guys all are able to run your businesses obviously very, very well. And what we want to do is we want to run your body that way. So when I grew up, I was always different. I was this 13-year-old kid that just was so curious. I wanted to know everything about my body. I asked for a heart rate monitor for Christmas, and this is when heart rate monitors were not accessible everywhere. This is back in 1998, where you had to go to a hospital to get one. And my dad was like, "What? This is ridiculous." But I would sleep with a heart rate monitor on. I would sleep, and then I asked for a brainwave sensor to track my sleep, so it could get into like the delta, deep wave, slow wave sleep, and understand all this. I asked for a continuous glucose monitor. Well, you can only have one of those if you're diabetic. Well, I'm a diabetic. I need one of those. So I went to the doctor and I said, "Hey, I think I'm diabetic. Can I get one of these to track my blood sugar?" Well, I was able to get it for a month. And I was like so excited to be able to look at this. And I would go to the doctors again and say, "Hey, can I take a look at my blood panels, the raw panels, and get copies of them?" My mom's like, "What do you want those for?" And that is what I did. When all my friends were reading comic books, I was reading medical journals. And so I was that weird kid that I really made sense in practical aspects. And I wanted to dive in deeper. And that different is ultimately what led me down my academic career. And when I went in to do my PhD, I said, "Hey, can I do my PhD in genetics, HRV, and cellular health?" They said, "No, you have to choose one." I said, "Well, the body doesn't work that way. Why do I have to choose one if everything is all intermixed?" I said, "Could I focus on one and bring the other ones in?" "No, you can only focus on one." So I wasn't willing to spend 3 years focused on one area when I wanted a holistic integration of everything, so I went my own direction. And I was blessed with the opportunity to be able to go into a league, the National Hockey League, and basically perfect a intertwining of how all of these metrics were understood. And what I started to see was that we weren't actually worried about health, we were worried about performance at that level. And we started to have these athletes forego their health for the use of performance. And I started to see things exactly like Gary saw, where I knew an athlete's career was coming to an end, or I knew somebody was on the verge of some type of addiction, whether we're leading with opiates or we're leading with some other form, and I was held to be quiet. And as I continued to stir the pot and be able to use this technology and use this data in a different way, I had to lay down my job. I had to lay down my career, and I got fired for that. And ultimately was able to see the fruit of that a year and a half later when the league passed a bill that the ESPN documentary on us and my firing was ultimately helped promote. And so it changed not only the NHL, but the NFL, the NBA, and Major League Baseball in what you're allowed to do with data for the health of athletes. Towards the end of my career, which I didn't know was going to be the end of my career, God intervened, and I was able to hear Magic Johnson speak. And he talked about how in the last year of his career, he made it a focus to go and actually get the names and phone numbers of everyone who had season tickets in the floor seats of the LA Lakers. And he made it a point to go for lunch with each and every one of those people that year. Why? So that he could ultimately learn business. And so I had that same notion. I was like, I know we're on the road for 77 days this year. We got 41 games. So I'm going to meet with as many people as I could. So that year I met with 50 entrepreneurs. Learned as much as I could from them. But the uniqueness was that as we would talk, they'd say, so what do you do for these guys? Tell me a little bit about that. And they were like, oh my gosh, so you're telling me that you're basically going to run my body like my business. And it set something off in my mind. They said, for the first time, health makes sense. For the first time, I understand what's going on. For the first time, I think I can do this. And very slowly, built up these massive levels of entrepreneurs, and my heart for these people broke, because the entrepreneur is the person who has ultimately listened to God's calling on their life, has stepped into that courageously, but they've actually sacrificed their health in the ability to do it. And that's what my calling was. That's what I led into. And so I stepped out, was able to ultimately help entrepreneurs create this change to run their body like their business. And so what I want to do is I want to paint this picture for you. And ultimately what we end up seeing, I think it bounces off the TV. Ultimately what we end up seeing here is just like Gary just talked about. You've got your DNA epigenetics, you got your cellular testing, you got your tools, your technology, and oftentimes this just seems like a big, massive blue ocean, and we don't know where to go or what to do. But if we break it down and think about it like our business, it can actually start to help. So let's think of DNA, epigenetics, gut biome paneling, cellular testing, as knowing your industry, your competitors, and your trends. Nobody would ever say, hey, I want to get into real estate, but never have, and go and buy some homes without ever understanding the industry first. And so we have to understand your body at the genetic level, at the cellular level, at the gut biome level, because there's this gut-brain interaction, this contract that exists, that we need to figure out what you're predisposed to. At that point, the cellular testing, the regular testing that we want to keep doing is like your quarterly meetings. You have to know what's going on. How is your body adapting to everything? You would never go and have a big download of some type of industry, wherever you want to be, and then all of a sudden, Kate, we're never having a meeting again. We're just going to go, we're going to keep taking action. We're going to keep doing things and do the same thing over and over and over again and expect a great work in your business. Then we come into the tools and technologies. These are our strategies and systems. And only because we know what our trends are, only because we have quarterly meetings, can we determine the appropriate strategies and systems. And one strategy that you use today isn't the strategy you're going to use tomorrow. Isn't the strategy you're going to use next quarter or next month or next year. These are going to change because you're testing and the information and the constant feedback you're going to get is continually changing. Then we can take it a layer deeper, which is something that I'm going to talk deeply about today, which is HRV, heart rate variability. And this becomes like your daily KPI. This becomes something that literally can help guide and educate us along this streak to understand what is actually happening and what's going on. And so I want to come over here and ask you guys, when we think of health, what do we think about? Okay, just yell out things. Energy. Anything else? Rest. Nutrition.
Proper function.
Function. Great.
Working out. Strength.
Exercise.
Feeling good.
Peace.
Peace. Just feeling good. Great. We're going to go to the outer layers of this. We can all of a sudden say there's tools, there's technology, there's technicians, And then let's go with HRV and testing. In this space, we've got your DNA, we've got your blood testing, we've got your gut biome paneling, we've got your heavy metals, we've got your technologies. Pete talked a little bit about them. We've got your exosome, we've got your peptides, we've got your ozone, we've got your IV drips. Over here we've got HRV. We've got a multitude of different ways to measure that through. You've got your Whoop bands, you've got your Oura rings, you've got your glucose monitors, you've got your Apple Watches, and then you've got your tools. You've got your workout plans, you've got your Pelotons, you've got your cold tubs, you've got your saunas, you've got your infrared lights. Wow. That is overwhelming. Where do I start? Where do I go? What do I do? What does this mean for me? And this is what we end up looking like. It's just the Tasmanian devil, and we're going around in circles and circles and circles. And we're like, you know what? I did that DNA test, but it never worked for me. Right, because we never figured out what system or strategy we needed to implement. It's not that the DNA test was wrong. It's not that the DNA test was bad. It's that we didn't take it to the next level and understand what it meant for us. It's not that you did that cellular micronutrient test that it didn't work for you. It's just we didn't know where to go after that. And so by understanding this, there's 3 things that we ultimately need to know. There are 4 things that we ultimately need for life, and this is just very easily understood. We need air, water, food, and sleep. Wow, crazy, right? But they did a 20-year longitudinal study at Brown and Harvard, and ultimately what we started to find was that 4 things created longevity. 4 things were needed and necessary for an increase in life by approximately 10 years. Increase in oxygen efficiency, an increase in sleep quality, an increase in average HRV, and a steady blood glucose, or nutrient-water balance. And when we were able to understand this, and what does this mean for you, because this is obviously the goal, we need to basically get down to the core of what's happening, and how does this plan look different for you, look different for you, look different for you, look different for you, because the system that I need is not the system that Pete needs, is not the system that Elise needs, it's not the system that Brandon needs, it's something unique, because God has made each one of us differently. And because of that, we've ultimately ended up in something that I call fake health. And I love this continuum because it brings it kind of full circle. And when we look at this, on the far left side, we've got what's called death and disease. On the far right side, we've got what's called true health. And this big blue space here in the middle is fake health. Death and disease is exactly as it sounds. You've got some type of disease, you're in the system, you're working through cancer, diabetes, any of these types of things. True health is like that new normal that Gary was talking about, that you wake up fully energized, you've got a big libido, you're ready to go, you're so focused, you've got everything carrying you through your day, and when you come home to be with your kids at night, you still have the energy and vibrance that you need. You sleep well, you feel great. This is where 90% of people live. Disease-free, but symptom-full. Chronic headaches, gut issues, can't wake up in the morning energized, can't fall asleep at night, get more exhausted the longer you wake up, or the longer you're going through this process. And what happens is we start to age faster biologically than we are chronologically, which is why this is amazing. In the last 20 years, we have seen a decrease in mortality by 17%, where in the 50 years previous, we saw a decrease of 2%. It's amazing to see this, because what starts to occur is, even though you're 25 years old, you're 35 years old, you're 65 years old, you're living in a 45-year-old's body, you're living in a 70-year-old's body, you're living in a 90-year-old's body. And the pathology that occurs cellularly at these levels ultimately drives us faster to death and disease. And so we become, at the cellular level, more predisposed to the things that these types of age groups would start to find. And that is just something based solely on lifestyle, based on understanding what our bodies need and what is required, so that ultimately, I'm a 35-year-old man I've got living in a 23-year-old's body. It's awesome, I love it, it's great, but it's only because we're living by design. We're living not by default, off of what everybody else seems to tell us. So by the end of today...
Justin, is that actually your number? Is that real? Like
Yeah,
23?
23.
Wow.
23. All cellular numbers, everything looks, and I do a biological test on myself. I did it with Brandon.
I've seen yours.
He was like, show me, prove it.
And I do that every quarter to be able to understand how is my body adapting. Go back to those quarterly meetings. Want to be able to understand what's happening. So by the end of today, I want to be able to increase your competence in what's happening here. When we can increase competence, we increase clarity. We know exactly where we need to go, exactly what we need to focus on. And that clarity creates confidence to take actions in a consistent way that will yield change. And without that, when there is a break here, we stop. And we're unable to create the momentum and the movement in which we'll create this holistic system that we continue to repeat. And the competence, I don't need you to understand everything. We need to understand one thing that will yield clarity, confidence, consistency for change, that will want you to get more competence and continue to keep creating that cycle. Because so often it's just this barrage of information through the influencers, through the Instagram posts, through what your best friend did, through what your family members did. It's like, oh my gosh, I don't even know where to start. I don't know where to begin. And we actually don't go anywhere. Or we try something and it's like, that didn't work for me. I'm broken. But that's not the case. I always love to go to scripture because that's the book of truth. And this was Paul speaking to the church at Corinth. And he goes, so I do not run aimlessly. We're not randomly choosing things. I do not box as one beating the air, because so many of us feel like we're fighting an invisible boxer. We don't know who it is. We don't know what it is we need to do. We're trying every diet, every pill, every tool, every piece of technology that we can, but we don't know what we're trying to fight. But all of a sudden we understand that it's not Mike Tyson we're fighting. It's actually just a small habit we have to change. Gary gave so many examples in his presentation of little things and nuances, but it came to actually knowing what was there, not running aimlessly. But I discipline my body and keep it under control, lest after preaching to others I should be disqualified. And so we're able to now understand what we need to do and how we need to operate. And if we go back to that example that I talked about at the beginning of understanding DNA, epigenetics, our cellular testing, all of that, when we get that done at baseline, I want you guys to understand HRV. Because our body has a language, and our language is continually trying to speak to us. How many people have ever gone to a foreign country where you didn't understand what was going on at all? Everybody, right? And you get off the plane and you're so excited, and all of a sudden you step off and you look at the sign and go, where's the exit? I mean, it's different language. We just don't understand it. All of a sudden you feel the frustration building. So somebody says, hey, you need to get to this address, go to this location. Okay, who do I ask? I hope somebody can translate it for me. I have no idea. You've got anxiety, you've got frustration, maybe a little anger building. Well, our body has a language as well. And our body's continually trying to communicate it to us, but we've never learned that language. And because we've never learned that language, our body gets frustrated, our body gets angry, our body gets anxious, and the way it displays that is not through temper tantrums like us, but symptoms. And so when we understand this, HRV is a language as to how our body is adapting to stress and strain. That's the best, simplest definition I've ever been able to come up with for what HRV is. The uniqueness about stress and strain is that our body doesn't know the difference between mental, physical, spiritual, or emotional stress. Has no idea the difference. I have seen HRV curves, and we'll get into some of these curves in a second, where I had clients go through back-to-back Zoom calls. and it looked identical to that of someone who had just ran a marathon all day long. I've had clients who were in the midst of a divorce, and it looked identical to somebody who had just sold a massive $1.3 billion business, and the stress of what it took. And so our body doesn't know the difference. And the uniqueness is that when we see an increase in HRV or a high HRV, the language or the way we can define that is we are adapting greater to the stress and strain that we are going under, and thus in a higher parasympathetic or rest and digest, relax activity. So we are in a better adapted state when we have a higher HRV, meaning that we're ready to take on more stress and strain, mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally. Conversely, when we see a lower HRV number, it means we have a lesser adaptation to stress and strain, and a higher sympathetic stress, strain, fight, flight. You heard Gary talking about those words in this same area, mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally. And because we don't think about this often, I want to give an example here, a little visual, is oftentimes we push ourselves so hard, especially as entrepreneurs, we don't take into consideration what the mental, physical, spiritual, emotional stressors are on our lives. And so all of a sudden we're like, oh, I'm going to go on a little retreat, a weekend retreat, and we'll put a little bit of water in. Oh, I'm going to go get a massage, get a little bit of water in. But you go back to your day-to-day, and you got nothing left.